Hello, and it's time for another CTE update video. In fact, two CTE update videos, because we've had some major changes to suppression and we've also had some major weapon balances that affect every weapon in the game, but that's going to be a separate video. In this video we're going to look at suppression. The mechanics for suppression were changed a few patches ago, and it's all based on your gun's damage potential. So when your gun is doing max damage, it's doing minimum suppression. It's doing 1 point of suppression. A character is fully suppressed when that suppression rate hits 20. So when your gun is in its max damage range, it takes 20 rounds to suppress somebody. In your weapon's damage drop-off ranges, the actual suppression is increasing as the damage is dropping off. So it starts at 1 and it will go up to 8 per shot. So once you've dropped off to your minimum damage, you're doing 8 suppression per shot. So that means you're only looking at 3 shots to maximise the suppression on somebody. The actual maximum amount of suppression that the bullets you fire can cause depends on the gun you're using. So LMGs with heavy rounds have got more suppression potential than PDWs. So this figure of 8 you can see on the screen is actually for an LMG. In close range firefights you're barely going to see any suppression effects, unless it's in a doorway on lockers where hundreds of people are shooting through the same door. Normally you're going to die before you get to the suppression effect. Where this model gets interesting is in the mid ranges. If you're at say 30 meters, if your gun's damage drop off starts at 40 meters, then you're going to be doing almost no suppression. But if you're using a short range PDW whose drop off is at 15 meters, then you're going to be suppressing your opponents a lot more in close ranges. So now not only does the calibre of the rounds you're firing matter, the actual damage drop off distances matter a lot in suppression as well. Now before this current patch, this really didn't matter because suppression didn't really do anything. It had been removed out of Battlefield 4 almost completely because nobody likes the suppression effect. However, now the rules have changed. These are the new effects of suppression. Now the figures you can see on the screen are for when you're at your maximum suppression level of 20. Your vertical recoil is increased by 50%. The first shot multiplier of your gun is increased by 25%. The spread increase per shot is increased by 100%. And the spread decrease per second is increased by 100%. Your ADS max spread is an extra half a degree. And these rules apply to the automatic weapons in the game, so assault rifles, carbines, PDWs and LMGs. Bolt actions have one extra rule, which is their minimum spread for aim down sights is plus 0.2 degrees. So what does this actually mean in game? It means your gun recoils more when you're suppressed. It means that if you fully automatic fire when suppressed, your spread increases and your spread is slower to decrease. And the maximum angle that that spread can increase to is also bigger. So now when you're suppressed, you can't fully automatic fire as effectively as you could before. In fact, this change pretty much makes you have to burst fire when you're suppressed. And it's a similar story for the semi-automatic guns, so the shotguns, DMRs and pistols. They've got even more of a vertical recoil increase, but they don't have a first shot multiplier increase. DICE's idea with these new suppression rules is pretty simple. They've put in-game gun effects that you can counter. So instead of suppression being an awful blurring effect or the gun randomly shooting off in random directions like it's been in the past, it's now recoil and spread effects that, although you can't stop, you can counter by burst firing or by pulling down harder when you're trying to full auto fire and you're suppressed. Again, this system seems fine until you look at it in a bit more detail and you realise that if two people are using very similar weapons but one has higher recoil than the other, the person with the higher recoil weapon gets more suppression penalty than the person with a low recoil weapon. Now for an example of this, I'm going to use the AR-160 and the L85A2, both very similar guns apart from their recoil. The AR-160 has a vertical recoil of 0.23 and the L85A2 has a vertical recoil of 0.37. When fully suppressed, the AR-160 will now have a vertical recoil of 0.35. The L85A2 will have a new suppressed vertical recoil of 0.56. When you first look at it, increasing the recoil by 50% across the board for all the automatic weapons seems fine. But when you come down to specifics, high recoil guns are getting screwed by this system. The AR-160's recoil is going up by 0.12. The L85A2's recoil is going up by 0.19. So it instantly becomes harder to compensate for suppression. So in a gunfight that involves both sides being suppressed, the L85A2 comes off worse than the AR-160. But the situation can be even worse than that. What if it's a gunfight where only one of you is suppressed? Put a third person into this gunfight and you'll see what I mean. In this clip, I'm going to be the third person in the gunfight. I'm miles away from the action with an L86A2. I hunker down with a bipod and start taking shots at the people on the hill. Now I'm going to be doing the minimum damage that this LMG is capable of, but I'm going to be doing the maximum suppression. Even though I get a few hit markers and deal some damage, that's not my biggest effect on this firefight. The enemy players that I shoot at now have a 50% recoil penalty, a 25% first shot recoil penalty and a 100% spread penalty. Personally, I don't like suppression, I never have. I'm quite happy with it having very little effect on the game. Ideally, I would just remove it entirely, because it's just a random system for scoring points. Suppression rewards you for not hitting your target. I had almost no chance of killing anybody on that hill, but I was suppressing them, and they were getting these penalties. Where does that balance the game? The fact that I, from miles away, can affect the close range combat that's going on that hill this much. Suppression was originally put into the Battlefield games so that if somebody was behind cover, you could fire at them, keep their head down, put them at a disadvantage. But what this new system seems to do is reward players for shooting and missing at ranges at which their gun isn't effective. And if they do that, they put a massive penalty on the enemies they're shooting at. That to me makes no sense. So how do you fix suppression? In my opinion, the best way to fix suppression is to remove it from the game. It doesn't do what it was originally intended to, it doesn't keep people behind cover, so let's forget about suppression. If we have to keep the mechanic in the game, then let's just keep it to a simple visual effect. No effect on the game stats, maybe just a little effect on visuals. And let's get rid of suppression assists, because all that does is reward somebody for missing, or reward somebody for spamming an LMG down a corridor. Let's stop pretending that suppression makes Battlefield feel more real, and let's just admit it makes it feel more annoying. Thanks for watching.